Hello, everyone. This is the Enigma podcast for this week, and with me is Mr. Raj Java.
Hey, thanks for having me again.
So, today we'll be digging deep into the Exorcist film, starting from the very beginning up till the contemporary Blumhouse movie. So, Raj, first on to you. What are your two bits about the Exorcist movies? Like, looking back, like, upon, like, the 1970s classic, how do you reflect back on your memories?
I mean it's a classic film. It's a bit of a slow burn, but that's very much in line with the movie making of that time period. Um, you know, it has a very like natural feel. It's not like I wouldn't say overly atmospheric. That's not to say the cinematography is bland, but it doesn't feel otherworldly. I guess you could say it feels very of our reality. Like I think maybe the filmmaking especially went into making this feel like it could happen to you rather than making it feel like a fantastical world.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think it was one of those first films that really like grounded the whole horror genre. And I remember like I saw like reels of people literally coming out of the movie theater and they're like freaked out as fuck. And they're like, for that time, I mean, that was too much. It's like, and it had an X rating for this thing. It's like, I'm like, well, that's just heavy stuff. And like it was made at a budget of like $12 million, which is peanuts for today's time, and it made like 441 million. It was like the highest grossing horror film until It crossed it, the remake of the Stephen King movie, It.
Wait, the remake, not the original?
Not the original,
It?
yeah, the remake.
Wow.
But I feel like The Exorcist kind of started everything. It's like it was like so you had like all these Hammer horror films. Now I don't think you know particularly about what I'm talking about when I talk about Hammer horror. But it's like these are all these classic Dracula and Frankenstein movies, which were like being made from I think 1930s onwards towards like the late 60s and the early 70s, and then I think this is when American cinema started to like catch up when it comes to like horror films, because this is when you saw like the exorcisms and the Texas Chainsaw Massacres and the Halloweens and the slashers and everything. Not to say that Hollywood horror was not popular. Otherwise, the horror genre was mostly dominated by like gothic horror movies. So this was kind of like a like an upgrade from that, where you saw like I would say like aspects of neo-realism, and at the same time there were like all these fantastical elements happening. So that was really fantastic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I mean, I think The Exorcist will always remain a like one of the top, like thinking of It, which surprised me why it's not wasn't the one that supplanted Exorcist, the original, that is to say. But yeah, it I think The Exorcist will always remain a staple of filmmaking. That's becoming harder and harder these days. Like, you think of like classics of yesteryear, like Godfather and Citizen Kane, and I think even those are falling out of the public popularity, the public consciousness. Like they're aware of them, but how many Gen Zers probably have seen The Godfather all the way through, or even more so Citizen Kane all the way through. Whereas I think at the time, and especially for filmmakers and even movie fans in general, those were like staples to watch. But I think now we have so much movies and content that people aren't even going to have time for that. But The Exorcist, that is a roundabout way of saying, I think The Exorcist will stand the test of time, and maybe that's because horror fans are much more um, movie fans in general as well. They're super fans, one might say.
Yeah, yeah, and this is like pretty much like the Citizen Kane of horror films, or at least like the Exorcism horror films, or like the possession horror films. Because after this, it was all about possession. When you think about it, it's like the Exorcism of Emily Rose, the possession of it's like the reincarnation or the possession of Aubrey Grant or something like that. I don't know what movie that was. It was almost that good that people thought it was going to be nominated, or people wanted it to be nominated for the Best Picture Oscars, but it did not get nominated. But I think this is like the Dark Knight of the of the horror film genre, because I remember like when The Dark Knight came out, they're like, "Oh, this is a superhero film. That's the reason you're not nominating it. Otherwise, it should have been nominated."
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, that stuff happens. That's the thing. I mean, there's a lot of, the whole thing, the whole industry is perception. I mean, people think of the Academy as if it's like, film experts. It's just other actors and other directors and whatever people voting on this. In fact, I think the Academy might just be actors voting. I actually don't know how that works, but I believe it's other actors just voting. So, yeah, I mean, like, what the fuck do they know? Like, they don't necessarily. I mean, like, and that's the thing. Like, I won't waste too much time on this, but like they say this every year when they ask voters what they thought. It's like, well, I didn't see that movie because it's an animation. Animation's for kids. It's like, well, sometimes they're not for kids. It's like, think of Family Guy. That's not for kids, but some people do. They look at, like, they just see cartoons and think, oh, that's for kids. I don't want to watch that. But you're leaving possibly good cinema to rot. Unfortunately, with your opinion as a voter of the Academy, it's like, well, you didn't give that film a chance, and now, maybe other people won't recognize that because you didn't bother to give a shit.
Yeah. Not to really be explicit about our whereabouts and everything, but we're not too far from the Academy Museum and whatnot. And
Sure.
it's pretty cool in the beginning to know that, oh, you're located next to the Academy Museum. What a fancy thing to be! But then you just kind of realize it's just full of shit. So I'm so fatigued right now. I'm just like, I mean, what was the Academy? It was like just like maybe four people who registered like the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, which was like the decision of like four people at some point. And then it just kind of got registered, and then they started calling it the Academy, and somehow it became the official Academy, and apparently they are the official Academy to decide like what wins and what's not, and what's a good movie out of the dozens of good movies that are being made every year, and what's not, which is so silly. And I totally understand where you're coming from.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like, how comedians are like, what am I going to win an award for best comedian? It's like, what does that mean? Like, what, or best comedy? It's like, it doesn't, like, being the best comedian, quote unquote, doesn't mean anything because it's not going to mean like, oh, everybody's going to go see him. Like, yeah, a lot of people might, but they're also going to go see, other comedians because comedy isn't a one it's not a one comedy, it's not a one horse town, I guess. And unfortunately, I think sometimes people think of movies as if they're like, oh, there's this best movie and then there's a bunch of junk. And that's not true. There's tons of movies for tons of different people. And some work for some people and some don't. Just like comedy, actually.
I mean, they definitely ignored The Exorcist because it was a horror film, but it was, I mean, too good for its time that, it spawned off like all these sequels and spin-offs and everything, including an Exorcist Part 2, which I'm curious to know if have you ever seen that one?
I don't know. I don't think I have. Well, I mean, I don't think it's a sequel. I think it's a reboot. But I saw, what was it called, Believer? The
Oh, that's a recent one. Yeah.
the 2023. Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely saw that one and remember that one fairly well.
What did you think of that?
I mean, it just felt dated. It just felt like we're gonna redo the movie very similarly to the original, without any modern, like, without any like modern sensibilities, without updating it for, like, it didn't seem extreme or like fitting to this time period because I don't know if maybe if I said it with you or somebody else, but it's kind of just like, um when The Exorcist came out in 1973, I think a lot of people were like, "Oh my God, a little girl saying bad words. That's really edgy."
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, I
when
remember
the
that.
when the when the 2023 movie climaxes in the same way, it's just like, okay, little girls say curse words. Who the fuck cares? Like, this is, I could go to a fucking high school and hear them say this shit. Like, what are you talking about? Times have changed that the movie didn't seem like it was going in a way and ended in a way that seemed like it was, it didn't the stakes weren't there. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. It didn't feel like the stakes were very heavy. Yes, you feel for this family and losing their daughter to whatever this demon force is, but it's just like, maybe now she's vulgar. It's okay.
I think the second part is like it was not really well received. It's called The Hat Trick, and I've seen it. It starts with it kind of gives you more details about the origin of the demon.
The thing they did dig up in the desert in the first one.
Yeah, yeah, basically. I think that's how it starts, but then it had me for till a certain point, and then I was like, oh, okay, whatever. My brother saw The Exorcist Part 3, and he's like, oh, dude, you should check it out. It's nothing like the second film. And it's like a whole like another film in itself, and it's like it's based on the Zodiac killer, on the Gemini killer, and the priest is actually possessed by the Gemini killer. I would not say it's like anything like The Exorcist, but I mean the first film, but it's like a whole like a self-contained kind of a film in itself, which has gained like a really cult following. It's one of those movies which are like not received as much as it should have when it released, but then eventually just kind of you know, gained popularity and like, developed a cult following. So it's one of the better Exorcist films. Yeah, there was a 2005 movie called Dominion, and there was The Exorcist: The Beginning in 2004, which was like, I think it was the beginning movie was like being heavily advertised I think in 2004 because I remember like this was like the revival of Exorcist. It's like
I'm sorry, you said the believer one?
The Believer. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
So this was like The Exorcist Believer of 2005. And this was so bad. I mean, they just went like all the way down in the rabbit hole. And it's like, it just kept on getting bad and bad and bad.
I'm sorry,
Uh,
which one was this?
this was Dominion, the prequel to The Exorcist.
Got it.
Yeah. And again, this was about the demon again. Like, how the guy who was once a man and then he became a demon or something like that. Strange.
Well, so they like tried to reboot it, I guess, but it's weird that the title is prequel to The Exorcist. Like that just seems like they couldn't, like they really needed to get the Exorcist word in there and they thought of the worst way possible to include it. Like prequel to The Exorcist, like that's it's too self-aware.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing mysterious about that title, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is like, it kind of shows like the desperation of, I think maybe Hollywood at that time. They were just like, oh, let's just keep making these fucking movies and like, let's just keep on popping them out and like, let's see what works and whatnot. And I don't know how much. Oh, wow. Wow. Can you believe it? It was made at a budget of like $30 million dollars and it made like $250,000.
Wow, that's horrible. That is a massive flop.
That's bad. That's really bad.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like they didn't. Whoever decided to greenlight this and whoever they got on board just doesn't seem like they know what they were doing.
Yeah.
Like they just kind of made a very generic looking film for what The Exorcist should be.
But I think the only two good movies in this whole franchise are pretty much like The Exorcist, the first one and the third one. But then you had all these other movies which showed like exorcisms and stuff like that. When you talk about like what's that, The Exorcism of Emily Rose, which is like a found footage kind of movie. There are multiple like there are all these like spin-off films that kind of came out like every now and then. Have you seen any of these films?
Possibly. I don't know off the top of my head, but it's possible. It's possible I saw films that were in the like surrounding areas.
It feels like it's kind of a died out kind of a genre.
Well, and I was going to say that earlier, and I didn't get a chance. Is like everything goes in waves. When the like you would talk about sequels and whatever's, and that's kind of unfortunately the taint of Hollywood is instead of like what's creatively um, what's creatively a good idea to go with. Where do we have a good story? They kind of like, no, the money follows the story. So you got a good Exorcist. Okay, what else can we make Exorcist? How many more Exorcists can we do? How many? Like, I mean, think the biggest example. It's not horror, unfortunately, but the biggest example is this is Avatar. 1 came out, and everybody knew there were going to be 5 more Avatar movies. Why? Why the fuck? Do you have 5 more stories already tucked away? Like, what the fuck is that? But it's just money. It's like, oh my God, this is a massive cash cow. We got to milk the fucking cow as deeply as we can. And I think that's unfortunately the reality of that aspect is, whether the idea is good or not, they don't care. You just slap the Exorcist idea on it, and it's going to be cool. That's why, for them anyways, that's why I'm thinking, now with Sinners, not only being such a big hit, but also going back into theaters in certain
Yeah,
locations and
yeah.
what have you, that Hollywood's gonna be like, oh, vampires. Okay, what can we do vampire-y? How many vampires can we jam into whatever ideas we have? Yes. How many Sinner sequels or duplicates or whatever can we make, or Sinners like movies can we make? And that's the unfortunate thing about Hollywood. They don't have that. Hollywood is business people, and unfortunately, the business people don't have the same vision for uh, the filmmaking. And unfortunately, because they drive the business people, it leads a lot of what gets made. I mean, people aren't going to waste time on their like epic passion project if they know it's not going to sell, when they can just write Steve Rogers into something and they're going to be like, "Oh my God, I'm coming my pants over this. It's going to make us so much money." Like unfortunately, like, as cynical as I speak about Hollywood, I think it's the reality. Like, there's no fat cats acting like that, but that's what's going on in their head when they're sitting in those boardrooms or whatever. That's what's happening, is they're just like, where's money?
Yeah. No, I definitely hear you. And I think it is. I mean, especially after COVID, it's been a really desperate situation for most people. But I did not know Sinners was going back in the movie theaters. Is that a new thing?
Well, I don't know if it was broad, but there was certainly other theaters, because I think they had to leave because of, Mission Impossible, right? Mission
Yeah.
Impossible was coming up on the heels of Sinners. So a lot of theaters were taking it out. But I'd seen at least one, I'm sure there's more, where Sinners actually went back into certain theaters. I think after Mission Impossible or whatever, or alongside it, or what have you. But yeah, I believe toward the end of May, Sinners was going back into theaters, if I'm not mistaken.
The more we kind of think about it, like with all the shitty movies that have been out this year, I think Sinners was at least one of the good watchable movies that, that was actually pretty fun while we were at it. But I think I would get why, people want to make more of these, or like Hollywood wants to make more of these kind of movies now. And yeah, well, what can we say? It's been our favorite film of the whole year.
Yeah, I'd say so far. I mean, I can't think of anything else, especially on the horror sphere. I guess The Surfer is a new movie that I enjoyed quite a bit. Yeah, but movies are not, they're not doing so great right now. A lot of the stuff I've been watching is at least a couple years older. In most cases, I haven't watched too many 2025 films. I guess other than Sinners, I think Ash would be another one that I saw,
hmm
which was okay. The Flying Lotus space horror movie. It's not
hmm
bad.
hmm I saw
Mostly, I'd
Squid
say it's
Game.
mostly about music. Oh, Squid Game, nice.
Yeah, Squid
Wait,
Game season two, which
like,
is pretty fantastic.
gotcha. I haven't even seen this first one.
Well, I think now you have a job to do.
I suppose I do.
So, well, folks, I mean, that was our little podcast for you today, which is like Exorcist and ranting on Hollywood. And, well, I hope you guys enjoyed it.